Let's start, man.
Thank you, sir. So, very good morning to all the participants who are present today. Uh, to begin with, I would like to thank the team NLD for giving me this opportunity to be among you all to share the experiences that I have had with reference to literature review. And whatever I'm showing today in this workshop is more about the experiences that I have had as a researcher, because a researcher is, I believe that a researcher is never a person who is an expert in doing something, but a researcher is a person who keeps on growing and learning. So in this duration of my research journey, there have been a lot of mistakes from which I have learned. With my PhD scholars, I've been doing a lot of things, and I'm here to share all those insights and experiences with you all. And that's why we have titled this workshop as From Articles to Insights. So, in name of literature, what comes to our mind is big PDF, hefty PDF from where we have to read. We struggle to read those 20 to 34 pages, and then it becomes very difficult for us to decide on that what are the points which are important, which are the points which should be ignored, what are the points which should be part of the research paper or maybe the thesis for whatever purpose we are doing the research. So this is a very small initiative in order to give you a small framework in order to identify what should be considered as very important from the papers, how they should be documented, and once the documentation has been done, how they can be used for research papers or maybe for thesis or maybe for conference presentations. So that's how this workshop has been designed. So what I've done is I have divided this entire presentation into 5 sections, wherein I would be starting with the part conceptualization, wherein I'll talk about, like, before we get into literature review, we have to think and conceptualize the area or the problem that we are planning to work on, because that's very important. Because if you do not conceptualize your area, you will not be able to move further with literature review, which I'll be just speaking for maybe 5 to 10 minutes, because that's the base of literature review. Then I'll be talking about the section 2, which I've labeled as part 2, wherein I'll be talking about how to identify the literature review and how to document them. So here I'm only going to talk about how to collect the literature review and how they should be maintained in specific folder. This might look very obsolete, or maybe people might feel this is something which we are aware of, but I really believe that this is one of the very important and crucial steps if you want to master the art of literature review. So part 2 would be about that. So here I will show you few examples of how I have been doing them and how I make my students do them. Part 3 is going to be the methodical approaches, wherein we will be doing some hands-on activities with certain papers that we have shared with you, and we'll be sharing with you in some time few more insights on them. So that's going to be a hands-on. And then once this entire methodological approach or maybe the structure has been created, how, so I am labeling it as literature matrix. So how the information from the literature matrix can be used by you as a research scholar or maybe a author to a research paper or maybe during conferences. And lastly, I would like to conclude the workshop with any question and answers, like questions if you have with reference to whatever has been discussed. So to begin with, there was a form that was being shared. I hope the screen is visible, sir. I'll be, there is a lot of movement that I'll be doing, and I would want, response from your end. So I'm referring to this. So the objective was to understand that how many like people who are attending this workshop and what is the area from you which you belong. So I see a equal distribution of teachers and students in the workshop today. But then, having said that, among students I see majority of them who are a PhD scholar. So by looking at this background of the participants that I have in the workshop today, what I plan to do is I'll be talking more about Scopus, Web of Science, ABDC. So I'll be talking about that structure, because I believe that that is what would be more helpful to the participants today. So that's how I'll be discussing. So nothing I'm going to talk, like I'll not talk very very much from first year, second year, or third year students' perspective. I'll be talking more from PhD perspective and research paper writing perspective, depending upon the form that I have received. So, to begin with, the first happens to be the conceptualization. I hope my screen is visible because I'm sharing it on full screen mode. I'm not able to see any emojis if you are sharing any. So, I would want somebody to just let me know verbally. I hope it is visible.
Yes, ma'am. Are
Thank
you
you.
able to
Thank you so.
see the thumbs ups that we share?
No, no, I'm not able to see.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's why. So, to begin with, the first and foremost step that we have to think about before we start anything like a literature review happens to be conceptualizing the topic for which you are wanting to work, because you can't blindly go on to start with a literature review. You should have some idea about the area for which you would want to work. For example, one of my scholars is working in the area of breast cancer awareness. Another scholar wanted to work in the area of say social media marketing and food influencers. So the area clarity is very much necessary. Once your area is clear, that's your genre is clear, that is where you have to deep dive into that particular genre and think about the probable problems that you are wanting to address or answer to. So before you begin literature review, the first and foremost thing that you have to have an idea, I would say must happens to be the area, if not the exact topic. But then how to identify my area? So there are various ways in which we can identify the area. So we can look back at a lot of journal articles and figure out if there is something that interests you. It could be some academic or professional books that you're referring to and you got some inspiration for an area which you would want to work. It could be from some research reports. Even a lot of journal articles, they have the editorial reviews being written. Even that is a very good read if you would want to refer and identify a particular source of information. It could be some video or maybe news articles that you hear and then you get some idea. It could be some government reports, it could be some website, it could be some company's small pilot project. So basically, the topic that we are planning to work on should be like we have to get inspiration. We can get inspiration from any of this. Now, once our area has been identified, the next step happens to be, because the area happens to be very broad, can we study everything from that topic? Probably the answer is no. So, the second step happens to be identifying the problem. That is the research problem. So what do we mean by research problem? So there are two major aspects in a research problem that we have to be knowing as a research scholar or maybe a person who is doing research. The first is, why do we want to do this study? And the second is, what do we intend to accomplish? I'm again repeating: first, why we want to study, and what we intend to accomplish. Now, these all aspects might look theoretical, but when we are doing a literature review, if we as a researcher are not clear as to why am I doing this and what do I intend to accomplish, we will never be able to achieve the desired result. So having a clarity of all these concepts is essentially important for any research when you are beginning with it. Now, what do I mean by why? So why could be something like this. I want to do a research because the literature shows me certain gaps, because there is a new theory that has come up, because I have personally experienced something and I would want to know more about it, because within the groups I have seen a lot of discussion happening, because I have seen Gen Zs discussing a lot about it, because I have seen millennials doing something differently versus what Gen Zs are doing. It could even be because I'm dissatisfied with certain thing that is happening. So, whenever we are selecting a research problem, the why has to be absolutely clear as to why are we intending to do this particular research. Now, the second question that we should be able to answer as a researcher happens to be, what is the intent? So, what is my intent? So, through this research, what is the contribution that I am wanting to do? who is my audience. So if you can look at this particular table, you can see a lot of audiences being highlighted over here. For example, whatever thesis or the area of research you are doing, is it that you are doing it for academicians? Are you doing it for professionals? Are you doing it for policymakers, or you are just doing it for a specific group that you are studying, or you are doing something for a community, or you are doing something for a general public, or you are doing something for a media? So whenever we are doing a research, I was just going through the form responses that I have got. So somebody has mentioned, which I really found very insightful, that they want to do things or a research which is very unique. We will not be able to do things uniquely until and unless we are aware about who my audience happens to be. Because if I know that it's my academician, so the contribution has to be different. If it is for professional body, the contribution has to be different. If it is for a policy maker, again, the contribution has to be different. So step number one, I should be very clear as to what's the problem, and whatever is my problem, my thesis, my research, who would be the possible audience for this particular thing. Now, once my audience is identified, I should be also, as a researcher, very clearly able to understand that what is it that these people would be interested to know. So, for example, if it is an academician, obviously they would be more interested in knowing the theoretical frameworks. They would be more interested in knowing the concepts, probably. If you are working for professionals, then the results that they would be wanting to know is that what is the empirical data, how many consumers are satisfied with my product. So they want an empirical data, they want to get the product being evaluated. So what I'm trying to showcase from this particular slide is like, every audience, the research for whosoever you are doing, the interest area is going to be different. If we are not able to look back at those interests and write our research, or maybe divert our research in those interest areas, we will not be able to do research which is unique. So for example, a policy maker, they would also want to know, okay, we have made a particular policy, but they would want to test it empirically, plus they might be wanting to know the evaluation, that whether the policy that we have been made, whether it is being considered proper or improper. Are people taking up those policy? What are the drawbacks of the policy? So something of that sort, right? Now lastly, we as a researcher should be able to bring up contribution. Now all of you, majority of you, because you have been saying that there a lot of you in this workshop are in the area of PhD, doing PhD, and people who are doing research continuously, this is absolutely important, wherein you're trying to identify that whatever research I'm doing, how is it contributing? What is the novelty? What is the newness? Am I contributing to literature? Am I contributing because I'm evaluating a program? Am I contributing because I'm suggesting some reforms in the policy, or social reforms, or maybe I'm giving some practical solutions? So the contribution has to be very, very clear. So if we are able to understand this appropriately, that is when we as researchers would be able to do research which looks unique, because our contributions are unique. So before we begin with the literature review, these things has to be, must be absolutely clear to us, because if we are not clear with this, we will not be able to take our work to the desired goal, or maybe to the desired status that we are planning.